Today is a special day. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's appearance day is um, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So nobody else came, or somebody came and left? All right. They went for the festival, right? In the Krishna parties, are they here or? Oh, okay. Sick. Oh, okay. Okay, so we were discussing about Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur appearance day. Today is appearance day, and he was commentator of the Bhagavad Gita. He is one of the gurus in the parampara. And one time Srila Prabhupada was reading the Bhagavad Gita, and one of his servants was observing that he was very, very immersed in his reading. And sometimes when devotees saw Prabhupada reading his own books, they got a little worried because they will expect that Srila Prabhupada will get annoyed by some mistakes that the devotees have committed in the printing. Sometimes he will open the books like this when he was offered a new printing, and sometimes the book, as an act of magic, will explode as the devotees write, and whoosh, all the pages will go flying, and Prabhupada would get furious and call whoever was responsible. So the devotee was reading, Srila Prabhupada was reading, Prabhupada was observing, so he kept reading, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and then Prabhupada just didn't even look up or anything. And then the devotee went close to him and said, Prabhupada, is everything all right? And he said, yeah, everything is all right. And he kept reading. So he waited another 10 more minutes or so, and then approached Prabhupada again and asked him, Prabhupada, is everything all right? And Prabhupada put his glasses up, and then he said, yes, why? It's because you have been reading for quite some time, and Prabhupada was very regulated also. He wouldn't read just any time like that, but he had certain things. And that was in a particular time where Prabhupada would read, and then he told him, well, because you have been reading for so long, and I thought something is wrong, or that, you found something. And Prabhupada said, no, I was just enjoying reading the Bhagavad Gita. And he said, I should write one. And the devotee got really worried because they thought, but Prabhupada, you're reading your Bhagavad Gita. And then he said, you already wrote one. And Prabhupada said, but just only one. It's only one I wrote. But he was more confused. He says, there's so much to say about this book. And when I read the pastime, then I thought, okay, that's interesting. Prabhupada already had commented one. But I understood, of course, the glory of the Gita is so much that it's eternal. It's not different than Krishna. So, and then he said, Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote 2 or 3. So some of these spiritual masters can unpack so much nectar from the words of Krishna. Practically every word has so much meaning. So one of the things that it is important in the Bhagavad Gita is to see the sequence that Krishna brings to the presentation. So there are there are questions, there are analogies, there are topics that are presented sometimes in a very summarized way, just like in chapter 2. We were saying last week, it's a summary of the whole book. Chapter 2 is one summary, and then we have Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains, and Prabhupada quotes him, and he says that the other summary is chapter 18. So the book has one summary in the beginning and one summary at the end. And in these summarized versions of the whole content, first in the first summary, it's in chapter 2. It's called Contents of the Gita Summarized. Contents of the Gita Summarized. So everything that is going to be presented in the Gita, it's mentioned there. Sometimes explained to some extent, but otherwise it's mentioned there. And then Prabhupada says in the first verse of chapter 18, he says, actually, the Bhagavad Gita is finished in 17 chapters. Mm-hmm. The 18th chapter is a supplementary summarization of the topics discussed before. In every chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna stresses that devotional service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the ultimate goal of life. This same point is summarized in the 18th chapter as the most confidential path of knowledge. In the first 6 chapters, stress was given to devotional service. Yoginam api sarvisam. Of all yogis or transcendentalists, Srila Prabhupada is quoting the 6th chapter, text 47. He's quoting Krishna, where he says, of all yogis or transcendentalists, one who always thinks of me within himself is best. So that's the summary and the conclusion of the first 6 chapters. The first 6 chapters, as we were discussing last week, talk about you, the soul, the self, Arjuna representing humanity. So those first 6 chapters, in different through different aspects. First aspect is identity, presented in chapter 2. Second is duty, action, work, presented in chapter 3, and further explained in chapter 4, added with jnana, or knowledge, the understanding that we need to have to achieve perfection. Chapter 4, transcendental knowledge. Then the behavior, it's very important, of the practitioner, and that is described at length in chapter 5. And then ultimately, our thinking. So our identity, our duty or action, our learning, our experiencing and behavior, and finally our thinking in chapter 6. Chapter 6 is called Dhyana Yoga, or the yoga of meditation, or the thinking yoga, we may say. So in that chapter, in text 46, the last verse of the 6th chapter, Krishna says, the one who thinks of me within himself is best. So that leads us to, we may say the Bhagavad Gita is like a three-peak mountain. So the first little mountain or hill, part of the big mountain, is up to chapter 6. And the culmination of that section is think of me. One of the ways in which the Bhagavad Gita is analyzed is by being divided. The previous acharyas, Prabhupada, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, etc., the first thing they do is divide the Gita. The Gita is divided, 700 verses, divided into 18 chapters, further divided into 6 sections. And the first section is, the conclusion of the first section is think of me. 6th chapter, and Srila Prabhupada quotes it here. So those are the first 6 chapters, and that's the peak of the first 6 chapters. Think of me, chapter 6, 46. You have it there? You mind reading it? Yeah. Okay. So that's the final message or teaching, instruction that Krishna gives Arjuna in that section. As I was saying, the masters of the past and the present, they divide the Bhagavad Gita into 3 sections. First 6 chapters, second 6 chapters, and last set of 6 chapters. And each one has a particular aim or goal or learning objective. And so if we see what's the message of the first section, of the second section, and third section, then we can easily link those instructions and understand in a few minutes what Krishna is telling us. For example, in the first 6 chapters, as we said, the conclusion, Prabhupada is saying and quoting in 18, text 1, chapter 18, text 1, think of me. So we can say that the first instruction or the last instruction of the first section is think of me. The second set of chapters, the middle 6 chapters, Srila Prabhupada comments on them, and he says, in the next 6 chapters, pure devotional service and its nature and activity were discussed. Pure devotional service, right? Can you go to 934 if you don't mind? Let's see what Prabhupada says here in this. So in the next 6 chapters, pure devotional service and its nature and activity were discussed. Are you there? Okay, so we'll read chapter 9, text 34. Right. Okay, so that is the conclusion, or shall we say the main teaching of the middle 6 chapters. Love me, in other words. Okay? If you do this with love, then you will come to me. Correct? Think of me, become my devotee, offer me worship, and offer me respect or obeisances. Right? Can you go to 926? So, the peak of the mountain of the Bhagavad Gita, the middle of all the 18 chapters is chapter 9. In chapter 9 it's called, you see the title there? The most confidential knowledge. Guhyam, that's the word. Raja Guhyam, or the king of secrets, shall we say. And this is very confidential. And as Prabhupada explains in chapter 9, in the first purport, he says, in the Bhagavad Gita we find confidential information, confidential knowledge. Confidential knowledge is we are spirit, we are not the body, we are the soul, we are eternal. That's confidential. More confidential is that God exists. Everything comes from God. Krishna explains in chapter 10, everything comes from me. Aham sarvasya prabhavo. But most confidential is to understand that we have a loving relationship with Krishna. It's not that, oh, God exists up there somewhere and He makes the sun and the moon move and appear and rise and set at a certain time, but I have nothing to do with Him. Yeah, He's there doing His thing. I'm doing my thing down here. But no, the conclusion is that we have a loving relationship with Him, and we need to activate that. You mind reading 934? 26, sorry. With love, right? That's the word he says. In Sanskrit, love and devotion. So the word there is bhakti. And the second set of chapters, right? Chapters 7 to 12, have a learning objective of teaching us about bhakti. And what does bhakti mean? To love the Lord. And it could be simply offering a flower or some fruit or some leaf. What else? Water. Yeah, like that. And Srila Prabhupada often gives the example of a little boy or little girl, child, coming up to his father, mother, friend, brother, or someone with a little one of those items and offering like that. But the child is doing with purity, just because wants to please the other person. So that's the message of the middle 6 chapters. So the message of the first 6 chapters is think of me. The message of the second 6 chapters is love me. Bhakti. That's it. So let's hear what Prabhupada says about the final 6 chapters. In the third 6 chapters, knowledge, renunciation of the activities of material nature and transcendental nature and devotional service were described. It was concluded that all acts should be performed in conjunction with the Supreme Lord, represented by the words Om Tat Sat, which indicate Vishnu, the Supreme Personality, Supreme Person. The third part of Bhagavad Gita has shown that devotional service and nothing else is the ultimate purpose of life. This has been established by citing past acharyas and the Brahma Sutra, the Vedanta Sutra. So, we have first section. In the first section, we are instructed, first of all, who we are. What are we meant to do? What are we meant to learn? What are we meant to experience? How are we meant to behave? And how are we meant to think? That's the first 6 chapters, sequentially. In the middle 6 chapters, devotional service, pure devotional service is presented. So, 7th chapter explains who is Krishna. 7th chapter, you know the title? You look it up. You can look up in the contents. I think there is a list of contents. So one of the tricks, I always say, in page X or page 8, I think it is. Contents, you see contents right in the beginning? Setting the scene and all that. Preface, contents. Okay. So the first, how sometimes you say that? Cheat. Right? When you go to the exam and you have those little papers. Is to, if anything, learn the titles. Because it makes it easier. It's just like when you go to your computer, you have a folder. And their folder has a name. And the name says personal or photos or accounts or whatever. So you open that and then everything is there. So much information is there. So the first thing to learn Bhagavad Gita is to make a mental note of the chapter titles. So chapter 1 is observing the armies in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Chapter 2, contents of the Gita summarized. You got it there, right? Chapter 3, Karma Yoga. Chapter 4, Transcendental Knowledge. 5, Karma Yoga, action in Krishna consciousness. Then the question is, how come chapter 3 is Karma Yoga as well? This one is like a cousin that has kind of similar surnames or something. Right? So why is it action in Krishna consciousness? Because it means when you put in action the Karma Yoga, the teachings of chapter 3, this is what happens. This is chapter 5. And chapter 6 is called Dhyana Yoga. The yoga of thinking of Krishna. Dhyana means meditation. And then we go on to chapter 7, middle section. In the middle section, chapter 7 explains knowledge of the Absolute, which means knowledge of the boss. Who's the boss? Knowledge of the Absolute. So in that chapter, it will be explained why Krishna is considered the boss of everything and everyone. Knowledge of the Absolute. Okay, and we have said this and we have discussed this many times, but in any case, very auspicious day, so it's good to read about these things today. This is a glorification of Krishna directly by the words that Krishna himself has said. Why someone is a boss, shall we say? Why? He controls, great. That's the first thing that he explains, yeah? Is a creator, the controller, creator. What else? What else? He's a destroyer, yeah. He's enjoyer. In chapter 7, 3 lessons are there. 3 points of why Krishna is the boss, knowledge of the absolute. He is it's called in Sanskrit Adibhuta, or the original creator. That's one. He is Adidhaiva. Daiva means divine, and it refers to the divine managers, just like the air, the sun, the oxygen, the moon, the ocean. They are controlled by universal and divine managers, like regional managers. But the supreme manager is Krishna. It's the Adidaiva. So he's the supreme controller. And Adijagya, Adibhuta, Adijagya, Adidaiva, Adijagya. And he's the enjoyer. Generally the boss, apart from many other things, is the one who gets the most payment or gets the benefits of the business or industry, factory, etc. So chapter 7 sets the beginning of the middle section, the middle 6 chapters, and there it is explained why Krishna is considered the boss of the universe. Yeah? And then in chapter 8 we find what? Attaining the supreme, which means that is like it's like a life insurance. That's the example that we give. And what is this boss? You know, when you go and you want to get a job and you go and talk to the boss. Right? Okay, so this is the boss, and the boss is offering us to do some particular activity. And then you're thinking, okay, what do I get out of this? So Krishna is offering straight on what you will get when you serve the boss. And what is the answer? The title of that chapter. What's that? Attaining the supreme. So Krishna offers one-way ticket. And what is that ticket? Back to Godhead. Srila Prabhupada in 1944 they started writing a magazine. And of all the names that he could have given, he gave that name, Back to Godhead. 1944. So Krishna started explaining about himself in the middle 6 chapters, chapter 7 to 12. He explained why he's the boss. He explains what do you get or what does he offer any living entity that decides to serve him. And finally, the peak of the mountain, chapter 9, called Most Confidential Knowledge. Then he explains his heart. And sometimes we present this chapter just like when you have your, what's called PIN code or password, yeah? And then you enter into your phone or your Facebook account or Gmail account, or you go to the ATM and then you put your card and then you have to press a number or so. So in the same way, Krishna is giving us the password into his heart. And the password is what? What's the password? Love me. And in Sanskrit, bhakti. 6-letter word, bhakti. Why? Because just like in our common relationships, right? If you love somebody or somebody loves you, that person has you. I will give anything, you know. I love my kids, I love my wife, so I'll give you whatever you need. I'll give you because I love you. That's it. Simple like that. So it's not that Krishna consciousness or bhakti, the process of loving Krishna, is something totally outrageous that doesn't make sense, that you never find any similar example or something like that. It makes sense, right? You give whatever you can, whatever you have, to those who you love, and they love you back. So Krishna is talking about the signs of loving God in chapter 9. And that's why it's called most confidential knowledge. The term Godhead comes because Srila Prabhupada's guru, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the first on the left, he used to use that term, Godhead. And Godhead means because there are other gods, the God of rain, the God of heaven, the God of etc., the God of the ocean. There's gods. And gods means Ishwaras, or controllers. But Krishna it's called Parameshwara. Para means superior, or para or param, like that. So he's Parameshwara. He's a supreme God, right? Or he's the Godhead, because God actually means control. So the head of that controlling power of the universe, it's Krishna. So that's why the term Godhead. I know it's kind of a funny one, because you can say, oh, it's God. But particularly in the East, and particularly in India, and particularly in the context of Vedic knowledge, the concept of God is very prominent. And when you talk to Indian people, Indian background, they say, oh no, but this God is the top. It's supreme. They say Lord Shiva, for example, in the second offense of the holy name, offenses of the holy name. What's that second one? Consider demigods like Lord Shiva or Lord Brahma to be equal, or to speak superior, equal or independent, right? So the concept of God is there, and sometimes these great personalities in the Vedic literature, in Sanskrit, sometimes in the Bhagavatam, they are called Ishwaras, or sometimes even Bhagavan, because they are very, very powerful. They possess, to a great extent, opulences. So sometimes they are given these names like that. And in comparison, they may be superior, but they are not supreme. So therefore, to clearly establish the difference between these gods and Krishna, the name Godhead was presented. My understanding is that Bhaktisiddhanta used it, but probably Bhaktivinoda Thakur used, because Bhaktisiddhanta, he wrote extensively in English as well, and he used the English language quite articulately, because the British were ruling India. So he was, in other words, presenting the process of Krishna, the understanding of Krishna consciousness, to not only the English, but the Indians that were educated by the British. So he was talking in English, and sometimes people complain that Prabhupada's words, Prabhupada's explanations are quite philosophical. Just try reading something from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. He used very sophisticated English language that even the British had hard time understanding, because he was so elevated and so profound. Only big philosophers and academics they could understand. So we go like this. We see the sequence of Krishna's teachings in the first section, chapters 1 to 6, then 7 to 12. And then in chapter 9, as I said, the most confidential knowledge, bhakti, the password to Krishna's heart. And why we say password to the heart? Because in real terms, if you become a true devotee of Krishna, Krishna becomes your servant, as contradictory as it sounds. For example, in the Bhagavad Gita, we find this image of Arjuna sitting there at the back, and Krishna is turned there, at least in this, but he's instructing Arjuna. But actually, the image represents Krishna driving the chariot of Arjuna. And if you take a taxi, you take an Uber or one of those, right? The driver has to obey your instructions. So in one sense, you can say the driver is your servant, because he's serving And generally they ask you, where are you going? Where can I take you, right? I mean, nowadays you put the address already in the app, so he knows. But he or she is taking orders from you, right? So God becomes the servant of his devotees. In fact, in many verses of the scriptures, devotional scriptures, Krishna himself explains that there's nothing more pleasurable for him than to serve his devotees. He likes to serve the devotees. It's like a father or mother. They love to, take care of their kids. It's not like you have to. I mean, nowadays, there are people who may not be in the right mind and they may not take care of their kids. But naturally, a father or mother will run after the kids. They are constantly thinking, oh, how can I, serve my kid, protect my kid, give them whatever they need. So that's chapter 9. And in chapter 10, the opulence of the Absolute. The opulence of the Absolute, again the same word, you see? Chapter 7, knowledge of the Absolute. Chapter 10, opulences of the Absolute. In that chapter is very special. How many verses are there? 42 verses, I believe. And in that chapter, there's a few very, very interesting things, unique things. First of all, in that chapter, there is a description. Krishna gives a description of how can we see God in nature. In simple words, we get the instruction that Krishna is the best of the best. Anything that you can think of is the best. Of animals, he says, for example, he's what? The lion. Huh? The king of the jungle, they say, right? So he's the lion. Of rivers, he's the river Ganges. Of reservoirs of water, he's the ocean. And like that. Of stars on the moon, etc. He starts giving different... That basically he's saying, of anything that you can think of, I'm the best. Of people, I'm the best. Of stars, I'm the best. Of animals, I'm the best. So whenever we see something, for example, which is the highest mountain in this area? That's it. So every time when we drive towards the farm with my wife, we appreciate the beauty and the grandeur, spectacle that mountain shows. That represents Krishna in his terms. He describes the mountains. Out of mountains, the Himalayas, for example. Right. So in that way, he's presenting ways by which we can see him in nature. And then in chapter 11, called Universal Form, Krishna shows 3 forms in that chapter. Universal form, we can see him everywhere and anywhere. And then also he has 4-handed form. In our hearts, he's in the form of Paramatma, Vishnu or Narayan, 4-handed form. But then his original form, his supreme and most confidential form, with 2 hands playing the flute, just like here. Govardhana, Krishna, Syam Sundar, Madhava, like that, playing the flute. He loves to play his flute. Everywhere he's playing the flute, like that. And that particular feature. And then finally, the last chapter of that section, it's called 12. Devotional service. And devotional service, that chapter, it's like a contract. I like this job, I like this boss, I like the benefits, I like the salary, right? Otherwise you won't take the job, isn't it? Whenever you apply for a job, you're thinking, what I am going to get here, right? That's simple. Huh? And that's devotional service. So when you like the job, when you like the offer, the employment, the conditions, the facilities, the benefits, what do? You sign up the contract. And that contract is devotional service. And in every company, generally, there is something that's called KPIs or key performance indicators. So that means that your job description is there. You have to do that. Right? Yes? Is that correct? That's normal, right? This, as I said, bhakti doesn't mean something totally outrageous that doesn't make any sense. So this is the description of what are we meant to do in this process of bhakti. And guess what is that you have to do when you signed up for devotional service? What is the criteria? What is that you have to do? I mean, not the details of cleaning the floor or decorating the altar or cooking this and that. What's that? Follow the instructions. Yeah. I mean, that sounds very. But ultimately, what is that you are meant to do? What is your job as a devotee? If there is one thing or one line or chant Hare Krishna, yes. You have to chant Hare Krishna with what? Just chant Hare Krishna like a devotion. Okay, now we are close. And what Prabhupada said or Krishna says with devotion, and another word was there? Love. So the job is to love Krishna. That's your job. I'm here, I want to love you. Like the song, or like millions of songs say, I just want to love you. Right? So the lesson, the teaching of the middle section of the Bhagavad Gita is, I want to love you. That's it. I want to chant with love. I want to clean with love. I want to cook with love. Everything that it's done in Krishna consciousness, in devotional service, is with love. That's it. Prabhupada said, in regards of deity worship, we are not after decoration. We are after devotion. So you may decorate, but you have to decorate with love and devotion. That's the idea. So that's the message of the middle 6 chapters. And the last chapter has a very, very interesting purpose or learning objective. The last set of chapters start with chapter 13. 13. It's called Nature and Joy and Consciousness. It sounds very complicated, very philosophically complicated. What does that mean? Chapter 13 to 18 have the purpose of helping us to get out, liberation, be free from this material world. Nature means material nature. This is a jail. So I am a spirit soul. I have to think of Krishna. I have to think of Krishna with love. Middle 6 chapters. But this is the reality. I'm behind bars. See? Behind bars. So if you are behind bars, generally every person behind bars, most probably, normally, what is their thought? Get me out. Let me out. Right? Please, let me get out. Right? So that is the context of the final 6 chapters. So here Krishna comes in chapter 13 and he presents a plan of escape. And what is that plan? First of all, I'll be your lawyer. How is it you're going to be my lawyer? Lawyers are very expensive, right? Everywhere around the world. And sometimes they charge you per minute or sets of 5 minutes or email or phone call, right? But this lawyer is particularly kind. And that lawyer is with you 24/7. Imagine, you have a lawyer for free 24/7. Unheard of. But Krishna does that and he presents himself as your protector. I'll be your witness. I'll vouch for you. Right? And he explains in chapter 13. I'm in your heart and we're getting out from here. Right? And in chapter 14 he says, look, there are 3 bars, modes of goodness, passion and ignorance. We need to break them. And in chapter 15, the yoga of the Supreme, he presents the Vedas. If we follow the Vedas, of which the Bhagavad Gita is the essence, then we have a plan. We're going to make a tunnel, and then we're going to dig this way, and then we're going to break here, and then we're going to cross over this, and then we're just going to escape. That's what the Vedas explain. And in chapter 16, he gives a very interesting teaching there. He says divine and demoniac nature. He's going to warn us, be careful in this material world, because if you mix with demoniac people, then your sentence will be extended. But if you develop divine qualities, then you will be given what they call parole, right? You will be exempt, not a problem. And in chapter 17, he gives us a key. Sometimes there's these master keys, right? They call it, yeah? Opens everything. And the master key in a spiritual life, it's summarized in three syllable mantra. What's that? Remember? You remember that? Om Tat Sat. And Om Tat Sat means Om, regarding the Supreme. Tat, we want to leave this. We want to escape. And Sat means we want to please the Lord. We want to escape, not because we're just afraid and we're tired of getting all sick and beaten up. Not only that. Why a prisoner wants to get out of jail? To what? To be with his people, to be with his loved ones. That's the natural thing. They are missing their family, they are missing their friends. Yes, they are missing their freedom, but they are missing the freedom to go and associate and experience life with those they love. That's why chapter 15, for example, it's called the yoga of the Supreme. Because if a prisoner is let out of the prison house, right, he's standing out there outside of the prison and thinking, wow, I'm so lucky I was let out. But after half an hour or 1 hour at the most, that excitement goes away. Okay, you're out. People keep, driving by, walking by, and they go like, okay, but I got to do something, isn't it? So I'm going to stand there and say, oh my God, I'm going to be here forever outside of the jail. But that doesn't make full sense. The person wants to reconnect with the people that he is naturally connected with. How? Through love. And that is chapter 15. 16, the warning. 17, the Om Tat Sat mantra. If you just pronounce these three words, anything you do, Om Tat Sat, Om Tat Sat, Om Tat Sat, that means everything should be given to the Lord. And finally, chapter 18, title? Conclusion, the perfection of renunciation. And that is the longest chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. 78 verses. And the final 40 verses, half of that, it's mostly devoted to summarize everything, and again, brings us to the most important, what's considered the most important verse of the whole Bhagavad Gita. You there? 1866? And this is like the lawyer saying to the client, don't worry, I'll get you out from here. Just do what I say. I know the law, I'm the lawmaker. I know the jail. I am the one who authorized the building of this jail. Therefore, I know exactly how to get you out. Surrender it unto me. Don't try to get out through other processes. They are too long, too difficult. The situation is urgent. You need to get out. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. And then he says, Ma Suchaha, do not fear. So in that way, Krishna has taken us through the different chapters, through the different sections, and giving us different teachings, but all they connect with each other. Who you are, think of me in love, specifically doing certain activities, and get out. Get out from this material world and come, as Prabhupada called his magazine. What was the name of the magazine that Prabhupada wrote? Come back to Godhead. That's it. Okay, stop here. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai. Haribo! 18 chapters in 40 minutes. It's a record. We made it.